Have you ever written a melody or encountered a melody, but you really wanted to make chords to go with it? Well, what I'm going to teach you today is melody harmonization, where we take a look at a pre-existing melody, one maybe that you have written, or maybe one that someone else has written, and figure out what chords go best with it. Let's do it. Okay, so hopefully you have read the melody harmonization guide that I posted on Moodle for you. So the first steps are getting to know the melody really well, choosing how fast or slow the chords change. You always want to try to have a consistent harmonic rhythm if at all possible. Sometimes harmonic rhythm changes at a cadence, but really try to stick to something like one chord per bar, or one chord per every 2 bars, or one chord per every quarter note, etc. And then you got to do a little bit of analysis and figure out, hey, what notes in this melody are most important? Which ones should be the chord tones, meaning those notes are in the chords that you're using when you harmonize it. And then you want to choose progressions that make sense, conforming to the cadence types we've studied, using harmonic sequence, or one of the 1-4-5-1 patterns that we've studied. So let's take a look at a melody and see if we can figure out how we want to harmonize it. So this melody I've shown here is a tune called Red River Valley. So I've only shown you the melody, and what we are going to do is figure out what chords might sound best with this melody. So step one is getting to know this melody. If you want, you could pause the video and try to sing this on solfege. You should be able to do that by now. We're in the key of F major. You would be starting on Sol. I will also play it for you at the keyboard so you can get the sound of it in your ear. Here goes. So what I'm going to do now is model how I would go about harmonizing this melody. Let's start with the first line. Now I have chosen a harmonic rhythm where I change chords every 2 bars. That's going to work well for this particular melody. So what I first do is figure out in the first 2 complete bars what are the most important notes. I've got a lot of A's at the beginning, and then this F also seems important to me. The G's seem less important. We do get G twice, but because the A and the F are on the downbeat and durationally they are longer, they are the most important notes in my opinion. Okay, so the next step is figure out what chords would have F and A in them. I think the most obvious choice, considering we're in the key of F major, is probably the F major tonic chord. That's always a great way to start a tune. So that's what I'm going to do. And just to be clear, I'll put Roman numerals beneath the staff, and then above the staff I will put the lead sheet symbols. Okay, let's take a look at the next chord that we want. So I'm looking at the 3rd full measure. I've got a D and an F, and then a C and an F. Well, I think we know that F is going to be pretty important here because of the duration. And then I think I'm going to prefer the D because it happens on the downbeat of the 3rd measure. And what I'm noticing is that the C, F at the end of measure 4, it's really more like a pickup to measure 5. So I think that C is probably less important. So I want to think, hey, what chord or chords would work with D and F? And we've got a few different choices. We could use the 6 triad because both D and F are members of it. Or we could use the 4 triad, which would have B flat, D, and F in it. I'm going to go with the 4 chord, but you could see if you liked how the 6 chord sounded. It's a possibility. In the next phrase, we've got a lot of A, an F, a C, and then a B flat and another A. In my analysis, the A, the F, and the C seem most important on the basis of metric placement and duration. Lucky for us, there is one chord that has all 3 of those notes, and that is tonic. So I am going to harmonize measures 5 and 6 with an F major chord. Take a look at the 4th chord that we need to decide. We're looking at measures 7 and 8. The most important note in measures 7 and 8 is that long G, scale degree 2 or re. And I also realize this is probably a cadence. Why? Because it looks like this melody is going to be 2 phrases long, and each phrase is going to be 8 bars. So I want to make sure I'm choosing a Roman numeral that would be logical for a cadence. There's really only one good choice here, and that is going to be the 5 chord, implying a half cadence. If I wanted, I could make this a 5/7. Maybe we want to do that because there is a B flat at the very end of measure 8, which would technically be the chordal 7th. And I bet when we get there, this will sound like a half cadence. Let's move on to measures 9 and 10. Measures 9 and 10 are very similar to measures 1 and 2. Therefore, I'm going to be consistent and use the same harmonization that I used above. Again, I'm interpreting the G as non-chord tones. They're just little passing tones in between the more important A and F. The next 2 measures, measures 11 through 12, present the most difficult challenge for us we've encountered so far. Why? We have 3 notes that are all related by step, and they each have something interesting going on. The C that we start with, we only get for 1 quarter note, but it's on a downbeat. So you'd think it's important. That goes to a B flat, which is also important because it is the longest duration we get for these 2 bars. And then we get 2 Ds that are repeated that are probably also important. Now, there is not a chord that we have studied so far that has C, B flat, and D in it. But there are chords that have B flat and D in it, since those make a third. What I'm going to do is interpret the C that we get at the beginning of measure 11 as a non-chord tone and harmonize it with a chord that has both B flat and D in it. And the most logical choice here would be 4. B flat would be the root and D would be the third. The B flat major triad. To finish up, our last 2 chords should create some kind of cadence. I want to have an authentic cadence because I know that will sound good. So I'm going to have some sort of 5 chord going to some sort of 1 chord, provided the notes fit, and they do. The way I have analyzed the melody, in measures 13 and 14, the F and A are non-chord tones, and the C and E and G belong to the 5 chord, which is how I'm harmonizing it. Now, we've done a lot of good work with this. Now's the fun time. What I'm going to do is play the melody and also play the chords that we have harmonized with the melody. And this is when you use your ears to tell you whether your work sounds good or not. And as Duke Ellington said, if it sounds good, it is good. So our ears will be the final judge of whether we like what we've done or not. Now, if you don't like the blocked chords, we can make it even more interesting and use any of the textures we've studied to realize this harmonization. I'm particularly fond of arpeggiation to create a nice accompaniment and homophonic texture for this melody. Here's one possible realization. So this demonstration shows us how we might harmonize a pre-existing melody, in this case, Red River Valley, to have logical and pleasant chords that go with the melody. You can use this technique to harmonize melodies that you have written yourself or melodies that someone else has written. We'll be doing more of this, but it's a great trick to have if you want to write your own music and make chords that sound good with it.